Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We're going to talk to a gentleman today who has an interesting career. He is a noted architect in the New York City metro area, but he's also had a career as a tennis pro back in the day. And we've centered on architecture before. We're going to center on his tennis career again today, talking about John Riggio back on the program. Hey, John, how you doing?
Good. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, we've talked about a lot in terms of your tennis career in past episodes. And I know there's a lot of stuff on the internet, Wikipedia and all of that. What are your thoughts when people go to search for stuff?
Yes. A lot of things that I was talking about are really from my firsthand knowledge from meeting people in person. But I noticed that if you go onto the internet encyclopedias, some information might not be true at all. And I noticed I was just referencing from the past some people and different things about their biography. And I just noticed that if I don't really verify it myself personally, I don't necessarily, I'm going to say what I read on the internet encyclopedia is really 100% the truth. So usually whatever I'm talking about is usually referenced just from my firsthand knowledge. I was using the encyclopedias on the internet to just refresh my memory, and I think a lot of it matches, but some things might not match, and or some things are left out, like things with people playing tennis and things like that. And I was just doing that just to verify what people were playing tennis and things like that.
So really don't believe everything you read.
Yes.
Okay. We've never done this before, but I know it's tennis season. I've yet to hit the court. I was just going to make plans for that this weekend. How about some tips to improve your tennis game? Any thoughts there for us?
Yes. I think one thing about playing tennis, and I know coming back to playing tennis and playing with a lot of different people, is that you really can't improve your whole game at one time. And another thing you can't do is that you can't really play tennis and then not try to improve your game, because you might not necessarily really play better over time. What you have to do is every time you go out to play on the tennis courts, you have to think of one aspect of your game you really want to improve. And you have to concentrate on that one part of your playing. Say if your backhand is not playing that good. So you go to play, and instead of trying to get all the different parts of your game to play good, you just think about improving your backhand, your grip, how you're standing, watching the ball. And if you were able to do that, you can then improve your playing. And that is the best way to do it. So every time you go to play, you try to improve one part of your game, and slowly your overall playing will get better that way. I think if you just go out and play and don't think about improving your game, you might stay stagnant. You're not really going to improve. And then another thing is, if you try to improve all the aspects of your game, it might not piece together either. There's too many factors to really move ahead.
You
Yes.
You think it really comes down to you can't do everything at once. So focus on backhand, nail that down. Now onto the forehand.
Yes.
On that, maybe a few weeks or whatever. Now onto something else instead of trying all different things within one period, one game, one bunch of games. Focus on one thing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Any other tips? Because I'm not that good. I'm always learning. I struggle with the serve. I think my serves are decent. I'm not out of bounds, but it's not a power serve. And there's a few times where I'm just practicing and I'll nail a few and it's like, whoa, that was actually really good. But it doesn't happen often. Any thoughts on the serve, making the serve better?
Yeah, I think with the serve, well, really there's a serve that is pre-teen type serve, and that's a serve where you just hold the grip any way you like. And they always leave that open for anyone who is really like under 18 years old, just so you are open to hit the ball how you like. and you can serve really excellent that way, just holding the grip however you want. A lot of people even go with like a paddle style, which really isn't the correct way to serve. But if you're younger, they always let those things go. And
Ah,
there's like, and so slowly to improve your serve, the idea is really to gain your muscle strength in your arm and your wrist and your coordination. So it takes some time. And but I think so from there you can play better, and then you end up switching your grip to the continental grip for the serve. But I think overall, just to improve your serve, I think the number one thing is really to throw the ball above your head is really like the number one thing most people do, because most people they end up hitting the ball below where they're above below their head, and that gives them a serve that's more like a beginner serve. So I think one way to really start to get a better serve, a more advanced serve, is to throw the ball a little higher, hit the ball above your head, and that will start to give you a more advanced serve. And I think if you notice, you watch television and you see the pro players, you see they jump into the air. And that's really how you have to do it. As you throw the ball above your head, it goes higher, higher, higher until you reach up fully with your arm, and then you have to reach up so high you have to jump up just slightly, maybe an inch or two, and then to really hit the ball, and that will give you an excellent serve.
is there, and we'll move from this point, but is there a lot of power that goes into a serve? Do you really have to be in good shape and really nail that ball?
You don't really want to muscle the ball, no. What you want to use, you want to use a strength of more like really whipping the ball, swiftly swinging the racket to hit the ball. You
Okay.
you don't want to muscle the ball. So usually, when people are older, a lot of people they went to the weight gym, and they end up having stiffer muscles. But you don't want to push that ball. You want to really swing your arm to hit the ball. And that's a different kind of muscle. That is like the same kind of muscle strength. Maybe if you took a tennis ball and you just threw it, if you just threw it down the court, it's the same idea. You can't really muscle the ball, push the ball. You want to just throw it. So that is the same idea of holding the racket. And I think that's why a lot of times you see young kids can hit the ball really hard because they have a loose arm and can swing their racket very swiftly.
So it's technique is key here.
Yes,
Okay.
the key is to keep your muscles very loose to hit the ball, not really muscle it.
So while we're talking about tennis instruction as you're helping us, didn't you have an instructor who was pretty famous at one point? I'm trying to think. First name was it Milo?
Yes, what happened is in 1987, the situation was I was invited, of course, before that to show up at the camp there at the U.S. Tennis Center, and just I think the whole game was for me to show up, find my way to get there on my own. So at the time, I did make it there, and they already knew me. They knew I can make it in very quickly. But to play sharp, they assigned Milosav Misir, and he is originally Slovak from Europe. He was their number one player when he was originally there, and he gave me some quick lessons just to keep my playing in tune. And from playing with him, I was able to really sharpen my game back up, really play excellent. And he also taught me an extra shot, a second serve. He taught me a second serve shot that I added on to my playing too. And that was a second serve where I swing through the top of the ball on that. And that really worked good. That gave me an extra serve, and things worked very good with that. So he was another pro player, and he used different names too. I think if you looked on YouTube, the same players on different names, and so he helped me out with that, and it worked good.
Wow. How about we talk about your moves? Like you moved a few times back in the day there when you were playing tennis, right?
Yeah, I think just to put the pieces together, what happened is after the success of the Japanese team, myself getting some investors and new partners and raising my contract up to 120 million. What happened is at that time, I was also doing things in my own personal life, and I was moving in to different locations, really like moving in with my girlfriend and things like that. And so at that time, that's what was happening. It was I was changing locations a couple times, and during those years, and that was really before they had cell phones, so they couldn't just get me on one phone number.
Right.
And that sort of caused a problem. This was another thing of some things going on that make things slightly more difficult, and so that was what was happening. And so I was finding better places to live and things like that, and that's what was going on.
Wasn't it one point where you moved somewhere, uh, and your memorabilia, you left it there?
Yeah, I think what this moves is eventually when I uh had left and didn't really return back to where I was grew up, is I ended up realizing I had left my first player card and my other tennis cards, player cards, business cards, other memorabilia from pro tennis, and I could put it in a box and left it up in the attic.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's still there, but I think it's still the cards and memorabilia are probably worth a lot of money. I haven't tried to go back and see if I could find any of it. I don't know what happened to it, but that is where some of that memorabilia was left, which is very interesting.
Hmm. Where was that? Was it on Long Island? I know you're originally from Long Island, or where was it?
Yes, that was where I grew up in Jericho, Long Island, in New
Okay,
York.
gotcha. Yeah. All right. If anybody's got his stuff and you're connected to Jericho, Long Island, he might give you a couple bucks just to get this stuff back because wow. It's like those things like player cards, just for you even personally, you can't replace those, but certainly they're probably worth money nowadays.
Yes, I think if those were auctioned off correctly, they could be worth a lot of money.
Jeez, wow.
Maybe tens of thousands of dollars, very possibly too.
Wow. How about some other thoughts from back in the day when you were playing tennis? Any other things that stand out for you?
Yes. Well, I think just a few things that were happening. One, when I was talking about Hammond Court in California, I did end up visiting there. I did particularly go visit Hammond Court. And
Now tell us about that court.
yeah, it's just a series of courts that's in Hollywood, California. And
Okay.
that goes back to when I was talking with James Spears and everything about the tennis courts. And that's one court that I could play at over there. So I did visit it there, and I saw it and where those things are located. And
Yeah, I have to ask you, and you mentioned Jim Spears. We talking, you've mentioned before Britney Spears. Is that her
yes,
father? I'm trying to remember.
yes, that's correct.
Okay. Um, at that court, since it's in Hollywood, in that area, were there a lot of celebrities playing on those courts? Was that kind of a common thing there?
I didn't really recognize, but I think yes, I'm sure a lot of celebrities do play there.
Gotcha. Yeah, just kind of curious, people you run into. Um, would you say easier playing in the New York area or California, or does it make a difference? Or is there a difference?
I think at the time it was much easier just to play in New York City because all the world players are still coming to the U.S. Tennis Center,
Right.
going to Forest Hills. There was still a lot of people and coming in to play in Manhattan at different locations. So I think New York City is still the central location, still easiest to play there.
Hmm.
And
Uh, yeah, that being said, we talk about tennis courts. Um, you had told a story about them locking them down.
yes, I
Also,
think it was a strange occurrence that started to happen, and I thought maybe that was because something funny was going on, like they saw the beast on the court or something. But for some reason in that chapter, they started to lock the courts, like college courts, school courts, public park courts. This was a trend, and I think this had to do with the new coding system they put on the courts. They assumed it was very expensive, and that they didn't want anyone to wear it out. Because I talked to one of the attendants, and they said that was the real issue, was they didn't want people going from different areas, using the courts, wearing them down.
Hmm.
And I think those new court systems, they turned out to be very uh, like resilient. They didn't wear down very easy. I think so. They weren't too certain what was going to happen with those type of surfaces, but they seem to have lasted a long time, and it took a lot of wear. I think the original asphalt court, I remember my sneakers used to melt right into the court. The new hard shell surface they put on now is very good. It lasts much longer. My sneakers have never melted in that type of court even one time. They're much more reliable, and they last very long. So I think this thing with the locking up the courts, even though it was a trend, I think their ideas that the courts were wearing out so fast, I don't think it was really the truth. In fact, I think those courts, they lasted a lot longer than the old asphalt courts. Because a lot of people, they started asphalting over their clay courts and then putting the lines on there, and the asphalt did not hold together very long. The new hard shell surface they put on there, sometimes they're in green or blue,
Mhm.
and they last much longer. So, but this thing with locking the courts did cause a problem, because when I went to any of the usual courts that I would play at, there were locks on the courts unless there was some kind of event going on that they would unlock the courts. So this was a strange thing. I had no idea what was happening. It was very strange, and but I think that idea seems to have cleared up, because those court surfaces seems to have lasted a long time. So that is what was happening, and but I think as far as those number of years that they started to really lock the courts and watch them very closely, did cause a problem with just playing those extra tennis events, and it did cause a problem. I just remember that, and I thought that was very strange. This thing with locking the tennis courts. I think if you go to any tennis court, you still see a lot of times the old padlocks and the chains are still sitting there, just like rusting, because they went through this chapter of locking all the local tennis courts. Where I live over here, I see a lot of the courts. They still have the old chains and locks. They don't use them anymore, but they're still there from this era of locking all the tennis courts. This was a strange thing that happened.
So frustrating. When I've gone to local public courts and they're locked up, I think they're there for the community to use. What is the nowadays when you see like a court that's green? What is that surface? What are they putting down there?
It is a special coating they have just for athletic tennis surface. It works really good. I see it's a coating they put over, and they put it over asphalt, and
Oh,
it's a hard shell surface. It works very good. It's a special coating.
wow. I know you're probably not going to be able to answer this question, but I'm just throw it there based on the coding. How long do you think it lasts before it starts cracking or have issues? Any guess? I know this is just a guess. Just kind of curious based on what you've seen.
Yeah, I noticed they really don't have to coat the courts too often. Maybe a minimum 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was kind of curious. I have some by me that aren't in great shape, so I'm hoping that they redo them. And I was just kind of curious if they do, how long that they would last for. So, other thoughts from going back in your tennis career? Any other
Yes,
things?
I think one thing about the tennis playing that I always did, and my sponsors always agreed with, was not being too greedy.
Hmm.
I remember in tennis, like starting off when I was the pro player playing my pro singles, they had this thing about me also being the captain of the tennis team. That I, in fact, would be the tennis of the tennis team de facto, because I'm number one player. But since I was playing singles and didn't bother with things like mixed doubles or things like that, I really didn't want to be too greedy to take the title also. So I didn't take the title with that, and it didn't affect my career or anything like that. I always played with the other members of the tennis team, knew the female players on the tennis team, made friends with them and things like that. But I didn't act too greedy with things like that. And I think that even as I progressed with the pro playing, my sponsors sort of felt the same way. We weren't acting too greedy because I don't know if people acting too greedy. I think the overall feeling was maybe if you were too greedy, maybe something would happen to you. You know, there's a possibility that would change your luck. So I think even my sponsors, for instance, like say I would play a set of 12 tournaments. Uh, if we lost one tournament, it didn't make a difference. We can just let that tournament go. Uh, it wasn't necessary to win that extra tournament, and we didn't have to be too greedy. And
And
overall,
when you say, I just want to, for all of us to better understand, when you say let that tournament go, how do you mean? How do you mean? How do you let it go?
oh, well, I think
Like you would lose that particular game or forfeit it? How do you mean?
yeah, I think if we were playing a series of tournaments and we would lose one tournament, we wouldn't get angry about it.
Gotcha.
It
Okay.
wouldn't be a problem. I think some people, maybe other players, might even lie that they didn't lose it, that one tournament, that they won it anyway. I mean, so instead of doing things like that, we never cheated like that. So we would say, okay, we lost that one tournament. It's okay. But say if we did a series of 12 tournaments, I would win maybe the other 11 tournaments, and that would give me the big win. But losing one tournament, we would admit to it. It wouldn't be a big deal. So that's really what was happening. I think I'm
Gotcha.
just remembering back. I remember some players didn't want to admit they'd lost the tournament. I once played this big match at Sutton Eats. I won the tournament, but my opponent had his friends there watching. So when he left, they all were jumping so happy for some reason because he went over and he told them that he won the whole tournament,
Wow.
and he really did not win the tournament. He lost. And we did have to, of course, just officially protest that and make sure he didn't go back and tell them that he won everything and something like that. But obviously,
Did he
he
actually win? Did he actually win?
he did not win.
Oh,
No.
oh, so you're saying he thought he won?
He, in fact, knew he lost, but he just lied. He lied. He didn't want to let his friends down, and whoever was there, maybe his sponsors were watching there, sponsoring and paying for him to play and things like that. I don't know who was really watching him play the games. And instead of admitting he lost the game, I think a lot of times on television, if you see the opponent who loses all of a sudden act so happy at the end of the match, could be a prelude to him leaving the court, and then him and even his sponsors make up a lie that they really won, saying they don't care if they really lost. They're just going to say they won anyway. And this was very strange. And in fact, I think we had to, really ask for like an apology from their side for doing this. But he was not able to officially say he won. I think sometimes when people leave the court, it isn't just the player too. It's sometimes their sponsors are telling them just to lie that they won the game, won the tournament, and then they can make it up when no one's looking. And this can be really bad. I've even heard something like this happening in the French Open. Some players, I know one player had to sue another player for claiming that he won the French Open.
Wow.
And in fact, they went to court, and this player who contested it, in fact, they did say he did win the French Open. And but the problem is the other player is still advertising that he won the French Open. And I think they had to make it where the player that was claiming he won but really didn't, they had to say he really won on a lower track, like track 2. And the guy who won the French Open won on track 1. So he won the top track, and the other guy won the lower track, like a lower league. within the ATP or the Pro Leagues, and that was how they settled it. So the guy who was the top winner was able to claim he won it, but the other guy, in fact, was able to say he was really a winner on a lower track. So he did get away with some things, but I think usually how the pro tour works is usually it has to also do with generating money. I mean, pro sports has to do with generating money, and generating money usually also has to do with it comes from winning matches, honestly, being the true number one player and winning those highest tournaments like the American Airlines Open, the Manhattan Open, London Queens, are some of the highest ones, Roland Garros.
Right.
And those are some of the highest ones with the most money winnings, things like that. So this whole thing with people lying like that, and it isn't just them, it's their sponsors, so serious. There's all kinds of behind the scene things, like it can go to lawsuits, it can go to where they get in big trouble, where they committed serious crimes. This is really serious.
Bad sportsmanship too. When somebody says they won, they didn't, they're making up stories here. We're out of time. Fascinating stuff. We covered a lot today, John. I want to tell everybody your website is johnriggio.com. John, JOHNRIGGIO.com. You can find him there. If you're looking for a great architect, or if you just want to consult, he's there. And one of these days, John, we're not that far away. So, when you come over from New Jersey to New York, maybe we can meet up on a court and you can give me some pointers. Just don't judge, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not that good. Maybe we'll do that someday, okay?
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, John.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.